Two armies are facing each other across a battlefield. On one side, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, elephants armored for war, chariots gleaming in the morning light, the greatest warriors of an entire civilization assembled and ready. On the other side, the same, equally matched, equally prepared, equally willing to die for what they believe is right. And in the middle, in a chariot between the two armies, at the precise moment the battle is about to begin, a warrior drops his bow. His hands are trembling. His mouth is dry. His legs will not hold him. He sinks to the floor of the chariot and says simply, "I cannot do this." His name is Arjuna. He is the greatest archer in the world. He has trained his entire life for exactly this moment. And now that the moment has arrived, now that the thing he was made for is standing directly in front of him, he cannot move. Not from cowardice, from something far more honest than cowardice. From a crisis of meaning so profound, so total, so paralyzing that it has stopped one of the most capable human beings who ever lived completely in his tracks. And what his charioteer says to him next, across the next 18 chapters of one of the most extraordinary philosophical texts in the history of the human race, is the answer to the question you have been carrying, perhaps for years, perhaps without even knowing its name. There is a particular kind of paralysis that visits people in midlife. It is not the paralysis of someone who has never tried. It is not the paralysis of someone with no direction, no capability, no experience of what it means to commit fully to something. It is the paralysis of someone who has done everything right, who has followed the path, built the life, honored the obligations, and who arrives one morning, usually unexpectedly, at the edge of something they cannot name and finds that they simply cannot proceed. Not because the way forward is unclear, because all the ways forward suddenly feel equally hollow, because the thing that used to generate its own momentum, career, achievement, the next milestone, the next version of success, has stopped generating that momentum, and the silence where it used to be is louder than anything. Who am I if I stop doing the thing I have always done? What is the point, the real point, the point that goes all the way down of any of this? That is Arjuna's question, collapsed on the floor of his chariot between two armies, the most accomplished warrior of his age, unable to lift his bow. And it is one of the most honest, most human, most important questions a person can ask. The Bhagavad Gita is a Sanskrit text, part of the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata, estimated to have been written somewhere between the 5th and 2nd centuries BC. Its title means simply the Song of God. But do not let that title create distance, because the conversation at the heart of the Gita is not between a human being and an abstraction. It is between a man in crisis, genuinely, viscerally, completely in crisis, and the wisest voice available to him. Arjuna's charioteer is revealed to be Krishna, a divine teacher. But what Krishna offers Arjuna is not comfort, not reassurance, not the soothing promise that everything will be fine. What Krishna offers Arjuna is clarity, radical, demanding, completely unsparing clarity about who Arjuna is, what he is here to do, and most importantly, why the way he has been thinking about his life has been making that clarity impossible to find. And that conversation, held on a battlefield at the worst possible moment, with the armies waiting and the arrows ready, is the same conversation you need to have, right now, in the life you are actually living. The first and most foundational thing Krishna says to Arjuna, the thing he returns to again and again throughout the Gita is about the nature of action itself. Arjuna's paralysis, Krishna tells him, comes from a confusion that most people carry their entire lives without ever examining. The confusion between the action and the fruit of the action. Arjuna is paralyzed because he is thinking about outcomes, about who will live and who will die, about what he will gain and what he will lose, about the grief that will follow, the regret, the consequences rippling outward from this single devastating choice. He is so consumed by the fruit of the action that he has lost contact with the action itself, with his own dharma, his own sacred duty, his own deepest nature, the thing he was fundamentally made to do. And Krishna says to him in one of the most quoted, most translated, most debated lines in all of world philosophy, "You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. You have a right to the action, not the outcome." Now, I want to sit with this because it is easy to read this as cold, as detached, as the philosophy of a person who doesn't care what happens. That is the opposite of what it means. What Krishna is describing is not indifference to the world. It is the deepest possible engagement with it, freed from the anxiety of outcome, freed from the paralysis that comes when you make your sense of self entirely dependent on results that are, ultimately, never entirely yours to control. Think about the things you have not done, the conversations not started, the work not attempted, the version of yourself not pursued, because you could not guarantee the outcome, because you were not willing to act without the assurance of the fruit. The Gita says, gently, firmly, with the patience of a teacher who has watched this paralysis in every generation of every civilization, that this is the source of your suffering, not the difficulty of the path, the attachment to where it ends. The second great teaching of the Gita is Dharma, and it is here that the text becomes, for the person in midlife searching for what comes next, almost unbearably relevant. Dharma is often translated as duty, but that translation is too narrow, too obligatory, too much the flavor of something imposed from the outside. Dharma is closer to this, your essential nature expressed as action in the world. Not what you were told to do, not what the culture rewarded you for, not the role you inherited or the path that was already cleared for you. The thing you were, at the level of your deepest nature, made for. Krishna tells Arjuna something that has echoed through 3,000 years of human searching with the force of something permanently true. It is better to perform one's own dharma imperfectly than to perform another's dharma perfectly. Better to do your own thing badly than someone else's thing brilliantly. Let me translate that into the specific texture of midlife. There is a version of your life that was assembled largely from other people's definitions of what a successful life should look like, from your family's expectations, your culture's rewards, your industry's metrics, the comparison points provided by people you went to school with 30 years ago. And that version of your life may be, by every external measure, impressive, successful, worthy of respect, and still leave you at the end of a long day feeling like you have been living in a costume. The Gita does not say abandon your responsibilities. It does not say burn it all down. It says, with the directness of a teacher who loves you enough to tell you the hard thing, that no level of mastery in someone else's dharma will ever fill the space that your own unfollowed nature has left empty. You already know what your dharma is. You have always known. The question the Gita is asking is, what is it going to take for you to stop pretending you don't?
There is a quality that Krishna introduces in the Gita that has no perfect Western equivalent. The Sanskrit word is Nishkama Karma, action without desire for personal gain. Work done purely for the sake of the work. Not work done for approval, not work done for security, not work done to prove something or accumulate something or become something in the eyes of people whose opinions you have been carrying. For how long now? Work done because it is yours to do, because it is true, because the doing of it is itself the point. Think of someone you have known or known of who had this quality. A teacher who genuinely loved teaching, a craftsperson who genuinely loved the craft, a parent who gave fully without keeping score, a person who worked at something not for what it would bring them, but because not doing it would have been a kind of self-betrayal. There is a quality of peace around such people, a groundedness, a freedom from the particular exhaustion of people who are always working towards something that keeps receding. That peace is available to you. That is what Krishna is pointing at. Not a state you achieve, a way of working, a way of living, a way of being in relationship with your own actions, that is available starting from the very next thing you do. Now I want to bring this all the way home, because Arjuna's battlefield is not a metaphor that requires stretching to reach your life. It is your life. You are standing between two armies right now. On one side, the life you have built, the obligations, the identity, the relationships and roles and definitions of yourself that took decades to construct and that carry real, genuine, irreplaceable value. On the other side, the life that is asking to be lived, the thing you have been deferring, the work that calls to you in the quiet moments, the version of yourself that you catch glimpses of and then lose again in the noise of everything that needs managing. And in the middle, you, possibly trembling, possibly unable to proceed, possibly asking at a frequency too deep for ordinary conversation, the question Arjuna asked on that ancient battlefield. What is the point? What am I really here to do? And how do I act, how do I move when I cannot see where any of this leads? Krishna's answer has not changed in 3,000 years. You act from your Dharma. You release the fruit. You do the next true thing, not the next rewarded thing, not the next approved thing, not the next thing that fits the image you have been maintaining, the next true thing. And you trust that a life built from true actions, taken without attachment to their outcome, is the only life worth building. Here is how you begin, practically, today. First, identify where you are Arjuna. Where in your life are you currently paralyzed, not by inability, but by the fear of outcome? Where are you not acting, not speaking, not beginning, because you cannot guarantee the result? Write it down. Name it plainly. Not the version you would explain to someone else, the version that is actually true. The Gita says that seeing your paralysis clearly, without drama, without self-criticism, with the simple honesty of a warrior who knows the battle in front of him, is already the beginning of movement.
Second, ask the Dharma question. Not what should I do, not what is the responsible choice, but what is mine to do? What is the thing, the work, the expression, the way of being in the world that feels less like an ambition and more like a nature? Less like something you are chasing and more like something you are made of. You may need to sit with this question for several days. It may require going somewhere quiet. It may surface not in a moment of striving, but in a moment of, as the Tao would say, stillness. But the answer is there.
It has always been there. It has been waiting for you to ask with enough honesty to hear it. Third, practice one act of Nishkama Karma this week. Choose one thing, one task, one conversation, one creative act, one gesture of service, and do it with complete release of outcome. Do it not for the approval, not for the reward, not for the story you will tell about it later. Do it because it is yours to do, because it is true, because the doing of it is sufficient, exactly as it is. Notice how that feels. Notice whether the absence of attachment to outcome produces not emptiness, but a surprising, almost startling lightness. That lightness is what Krishna was pointing at. That is what it feels like to act from Dharma. That is what it feels like to be free. Fourth, return to the battlefield. Whatever you have been avoiding, whatever conversation, decision, beginning, or act of honesty you have been standing at the edge of, return to it this week. Not with the armor of certainty, not with the guarantee of the outcome, but with Arjuna's bow back in your hands and Krishna's clarity in your ear. You have a right to the action, not the outcome. The battlefield is not the problem. The attachment to winning it cleanly, costlessly, perfectly, that is the problem. Show up, do the true thing, and let the rest, as it always has, as it always will, take care of itself. I want to close where we began. Arjuna on the floor of his chariot, armies waiting, the moment he was made for standing directly in front of him, and every part of him refusing to move. It takes 18 chapters of the most profound philosophical teaching in the history of Indian civilization to get him back on his feet. And when he stands, when he finally, fully stands, bow in hand, eyes clear, the paralysis resolved not by certainty, but by understanding, he does not stand because he knows how it ends. He stands because he knows who he is. He knows his Dharma. He knows the action that is his to take. He knows at a depth no outcome can reach that a life lived in avoidance of its own truest nature is not a life at all. And he knows this is his moment, not despite the difficulty, because of it. Here is the question Krishna would ask you today, not gently, with the directness of a teacher who loves you enough to tell the truth. What is the thing you know in the place that is deeper than fear, deeper than doubt, deeper than the noise of everyone else's expectations is yours to do? And what are you waiting for? Leave that in the comments, because that answer, your true, unguarded, Dharma-deep answer, is the bow back in your hands. I'll see you in the next one.